Welcome to the Galaxy Channel. Thank you for tuning in. You're going to be glad you did. We have a great episode in store for you today. So let me get you up to speed with what's going on the channel this month. I just finished a month of daily vlogs and it was an amazing experience. It definitely gave me the opportunity to put out a lot of content and get a lot of practice familiarizing myself with the process of making content. But looking back on last month's vlogs, there are a few topics where I think I only scratched the surface. And I think that I can provide a lot more value with this channel if I go into some of these topics with a little more depth. So that's what we're gonna do this month. We're gonna cover how to start a podcast. So we're gonna have 4 videos in February, and it's gonna be a deep dive into the subject of podcasting. And since I wanna show every single step in detail in the process of starting a podcast, I decided what better way to do that than actually start a podcast. And that's where my beautiful fiance Masha comes in, because Masha's thinking of starting a podcast of her own. And what's it about?
My favorite thing, dogs.
So, starting right now, we're gonna be launching Masha's dog podcast.
And he's making me document all of it.
So let's talk starting a podcast. And the first thing that you need to do when you're starting a podcast is come up with the topic for your podcast. And there are 3 main criteria that I think that your topic needs to pass in order to be a good topic for a podcast. It needs to be something that you're interested in, it needs to be something that other people are interested in, and it needs to be a topic where there aren't already a whole bunch of other podcasts covering it. Otherwise, what would be the point? So for example, we're gonna use Masha's proposed podcast topic here, which is dogs, and we're gonna see if that meets all 3 of our very scientific criteria that I've laid out here. So, Masha, are you interested in dogs?
Yes, I am.
She's very interested in dogs. Pretty much all that she cares about. Dogs, horses, and maybe me a little bit. Are other people interested in dogs?
Heck yeah.
I mean, yeah, this one, you could probably, if you had to, prove this to yourself, go and do like a Google search for dogs and see if there's a lot of results. Yeah, there's a lot of people who are into dogs. There's a lot of dog-based Instagram pages and dog-based YouTube channels and things like that. Some of them go pretty viral. I don't think we're gonna have much of a problem there. So we've met our first 2 criteria here, and the next one is, are there already people who are basically making the podcast that you want to make? So we went on to Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and we looked a little around a little bit to see if there are podcasts already about dogs. And what did you find out?
There's a lot of podcasts about dogs. So there's definitely a lot of podcasts on dog training. So I guess like helpful tips and tricks for training your dog. The other one is that I came across a lot is just talking about different dog breeds. Big areas where there was actually a lot of podcasts already when it comes to dogs.
Nice, and that's why we decided not to do a podcast about dog training or anything like that. I mean, we don't really have the expertise. You can see our dogs aren't that well trained. Basically, we decided that the best thing to do, and this was kind of inspired by some of the content that I was doing on my podcast where we were doing a little bit more historical stuff. Masha kind of thought, hey, what if we did something on historical dogs, right?
Yeah, so well, Jared really helped me come up with this idea, so a lot of credit goes to you. He's pretty smart. I hate to say it, guys, but it's true. But so what we kind of decided on is highlighting heroic dogs from history. So we're looking at obviously canine figures throughout history who have achieved something in their lifetime for which they're famous, and kind of highlighting them and bringing them back from history and really making sure that we're remembering their names and recognizing their accomplishments in the history of the world.
So once you've decided on a topic, there are 2 more really important things that you need to do even before you start recording your podcast. And that is come up with a name for your podcast and get a cover for your podcast. So for the name of Masha's podcast, what are you thinking?
I'm gonna call it Masha and the Dogs. Obviously, I'm Masha and I love the dogs. And I think that fits really well. Plus, that's already the name of my Instagram, so I can easily connect that back to the podcast. But then the other thing is that it's a little bit of a nod to a Russian fairy tale that's called
Nice.
Masha and the Bear.
All right, we're really making some progress with our podcast here. The last thing that we're going to talk about in this episode is developing your podcast cover. And I actually had my design intern, Dante, tackle the podcast cover for Masha and the Dogs. So Dante is going to get into the process right now. Take it away, Dante.
Hi, my name is Dante Michael Smith, and I am the artist for the Masha and the Dogs cover. The concept behind this cover was to create something that would incorporate the Masha and the Bear, which is a Russian fairy tale, and include historical dogs. During my research, I realized that a lot of Russian fairy tale designs and illustrations, they use a lot of water-based colors, and it's more of a paint-based design. So I wanted to find a way to incorporate that in this podcast cover. So I started off with a few sketches, and now these sketches were just rough sketches, sort of figuring out the placement for where I wanted everything to go. So I went back and forth with my art director, and we finally came up with the final sketch. Now, the final sketch was the woman in the middle, and then you would have the two dogs on each side of the woman, and the forest in the background, as well as the title at the top. Now, once we came up with the final sketch, I took it into Illustrator. Once I took it into Illustrator, turned it into an illustration. And now for the coloring process, I wanted to add that watercolor feel to it because that was how they did it in the Russian fairy tale styles when they were creating their illustrations. So I wanted to incorporate that. Now I took this into Photoshop, and once I had the cover in Photoshop, I used the paintbrush tool, and I used a watercolor paintbrush so that way it can give it that effect of the Russian fairy tale style. Here is the final cover, and it came out exactly the way I wanted it to come out. Without the help of my art director, it wouldn't have reached the height that it reached, and I am so proud of this project, and I am glad that, I took this project on. At first, it was a bit of a struggle during the sketching process, trying to figure out exactly how I want to place the dog and how I want to place the woman and the forest as well, and also including the Russian fairy tale style of art, because that was very difficult since I wasn't used to creating something like that. So this was completely new to me, and I really enjoyed this whole process. It was amazing to start it off and to take it into illustration and see how far my illustration skills can really progress and really develop. And I'm proud of this project, and I hope you guys enjoyed as much as I did. Thank you very much. Once again, this is the final product. I hope you enjoy it.
So that's the story of the cover, and that means that we've reached the end of this video. So far, we have our topic, name, and cover, and next week is going to be really exciting because we are going to find some theme music for the podcast, we're going to record the podcast, and we're going to edit the podcast. We're getting super close to the official launch of Masha and the Dogs. See you next week.